Good evening. I'm recording this video to explain, in my opinion, why it is that men, and particularly young men, voted for Trump in the last election. People in general voted for Trump because they feel the political and cultural establishment has driven society off the rails, particularly when it comes to gender and sexuality. But for men, there's a specific fear that masculinity is under attack. And for young men, this fear is especially potent because they are in the process of constructing their identities as men, or of becoming a man, as the saying goes. The greater acceptance of gays and transgender individuals in recent decades makes it more complicated and precarious for ordinary young men to figure out how to be a man. Why so? Because our contemporary notions of gender and sexuality are based on two false assertions. The first assertion claims that same-sex feelings makes a person gay or bisexual. And the second false assertion claims that same-sex feelings are rare in human beings. These two false assertions run up against the fact of human sexual nature, that most people are born with the natural capacity to feel arousal with males and females. We can see that bisexuality is the innate condition of human beings by reading ancient literature, or even just by listening carefully to the way non-gay people talk about straightness or gayness. Straight people generally talk about homosexuality as a sexual preference, or as a state that can change over the course of one's life, while gays generally talk about sexual orientation as something that cannot change and over which one has no choice. Why do straights imply that homosexuality is a preference rather than a fixed orientation? This is because most straights are innately bisexual and become straight due to the power of a taboo that they have internalized since early childhood. To prove that exclusive heterosexuality is not a natural state for most human beings, but rather the product of a taboo, I recommend reading Sigmund Freud's 3 essays on the theory of sexuality, or any amount of classical Greek and Roman literature, or just draw the necessary inference from the sometimes expressed fear that tolerating homosexuality in society will cause the end of human reproduction. How could anyone think that, unless they recognized that homosexuality was a potential preference for human beings in general? If not for the taboo on same-sex activity and feeling, most people would not think of themselves as heterosexual. Instead, they would acknowledge their own natural attraction to both males and females. The taboo causes people to repress their same-sex impulses, starting in early childhood and throughout their lives, which means that they push those thoughts and passing feelings out of their conscious minds. You may think that this taboo comes from the Bible or Quran or whatever religious scripture you follow, but besides incest and bestiality, these scriptures prohibit only heterosexual adultery and anal intercourse with a male in the receptive position. The scriptures do not mandate that sex can only be for procreation within marriage. The Quran does tell people to guard their private parts from people other than their mates and slaves, those whom their right hands possess, thus discouraging promiscuity. But it does not say that a man can't have a boyfriend as long as there's no anal intercourse practiced on a male, or that a woman can't have a girlfriend. The idea for this taboo on sex outside of marriage, and on same-sex activity in particular, came originally from the Greek philosopher Plato, who lived 4 centuries before Jesus, and not from religious scriptures. But Plato suggested using religion to establish and sustain the taboo, which is why people think it comes from religion. The text spelling out Plato's plan is in his Dialogue on Laws on pages 838 to 841, according to the standardized numbering. For a taboo to be effective, as Plato noted, there must be unanimity about it throughout society. And that unanimity ended with the emergence of the gay rights movement in the 1970s. The great Sigmund Freud pointed out the importance of unanimous condemnation to prevent what he called inversion. That is, people directing their sexual libido toward persons of their own sex. Freud did know that some people were just gay. He called them absolute inverts, saying, in that case, their sexual objects are exclusively of their own sex. Persons of the opposite sex are never the object of their sexual desire, but leave them cold, or even arouse sexual aversion in them. As a consequence of this aversion, they are incapable, if they are men, of carrying out the sexual act, or else they derive no enjoyment from it. Freud also mentioned a category of people who are equally attracted to both sexes, whom he called amphigenic inverts. But in the third place, Freud described contingent inverts, saying in that case, under certain external conditions, of which the inaccessibility of any normal sexual object and imitation are the chief external conditions, they are capable of taking as their sexual object someone of their own sex and of deriving satisfaction from sexual intercourse with them. Here he's talking about people who are straight in general, but use same-sex activity when the opposite sex is unavailable, like in prison. Or people who are enticed by same-sex feelings because they see someone else enjoying it. That's the imitation that he was talking about. In order to prevent inversion, Freud claimed, no doubt the strongest force against a permanent inversion of the sexual object is the attraction which the opposing sexual characters exercise upon one another. In plain language, he is saying that the main thing that keeps people in general from becoming gay is the fact that they also have sexual desire for the opposite sex. He goes on, this factor is not in itself, however, sufficient to exclude inversion. There are no doubt a variety of other contributory factors. Chief among these is its authoritative prohibition by society. Here Freud is saying that the taboo is what keeps people from living as bisexuals throughout their lives. He finished this thought by saying, where inversion is not regarded as a crime, it will be found that it answers fully to the sexual inclinations of no small number of people. In other words, if same-sex activity were not considered a crime or a sin, large numbers of people would practice it. As a result of gay people coming out over the past half-century, the unanimity of condemnation has been broken, and there has been a slow-growing tension in the culture, which we refer to as the culture wars. But in these wars, the enemy is within, insofar as it is a war within the individual to keep one's own same-sex feelings out of consciousness and thus hold on to one's straightness. That is hard to do when you see people indulging their same-sex feelings and being celebrated for it. It is especially hard to do when the entertainment media keep promoting the sexual hotness of men. It gets those feelings deep within simmering just below the surface. As I said at the beginning, young men in particular feel a pull towards Trump because they are at a stage of life when they are trying to establish their identities as men. They are growing up in an environment when same-sex feelings are ostensibly celebrated, but they are also expected to repress their own same-sex feelings in order to count as straight, or even as men at all. This is because of the false assertions that I mentioned before, that same-sex feelings make a person a sexual minority, gay or bisexual, and that same-sex feelings are rare in human beings. So even though same-sex feelings are common, young men feel that they need to repress them in order not to be deemed part of the LGBTQ minority. Another reason why it is crucial for an ordinary man to avoid being identified as LGBTQ is that gay men are also defined by an impotence with women, which diminishes their manhood. The traditional definition of manhood, or virility, has everything to do with being potent with women. In fact, manhood is traditionally defined in opposition to women anatomically, but in opposition to gay men in terms of sexual performance. This is why even temporary impotence is so demoralizing to a man. So young men face the challenge of repressing their same-sex feelings while surrounded by enticements to same-sex desire. And if they fail to repress those feelings, they fear losing their status as men altogether. In fact, traditionally, it was not the absence of same-sex feelings, but the presence of opposite-sex feelings that made a man a man. Having same-sex feelings made no difference to one's masculinity. If we could get back to where that knowledge was widespread, things would be a lot better because men could stop worrying about their manhood just because they got turned on by watching MMA. The U.S. Supreme Court decision establishing a right to same-sex marriage put the burner on high under the simmering pot that is the American psyche. It persuaded the public that the establishment of both major parties was failing to maintain the basic heterosexual order. In the very month that the Supreme Court ruling was anticipated, June of 2015, Donald Trump announced his candidacy for President of the United States. After the Supreme Court legalized same-sex marriage, Trump dominated every Republican poll from then until now. Still, people could not name the source of their discomfort because naming it would only bring their own same-sex feelings further into consciousness, which their minds were trying to avoid. Instead, people named every other cause for their discontent. Illegal immigration, COVID masks, black people protesting police violence, so-called wokeness, free trade, environmental regulations, the economy. While these issues could explain a political move to the right, they do not explain people's willingness to risk overthrowing democracy. Shrewdly, Trump launched his first campaign talking about immigration rather than same-sex marriage. But he knows the real source of discontent driving his popularity. That is why he repeats the phrase, the enemy within. He is speaking to the enemy within each individual. That is why he stokes that discomfort by playing Village People as his theme music at rallies. It's the perfect trigger. It's fun, but it ever so subtly undermines the heterosexual identification of the people dancing to it, heightening their tension, their sense of unease. Dancing to YMCA used to be fun and a little transgressive. You can do whatever you feel at the YMCA. But now, in Trump's hands, it became a trigger, like the Queen of Diamonds in the movie called The Manchurian Candidate, which I recommend anybody watch. Except that this time the trigger was played by the candidate against the people. So here we are now, with Trump returning to the White House, Matt Gaetz nominated for U.S. Attorney General, and the Republican Party running all branches of the U.S. government, but unable to say no to the literal con man that they have just elected to be the most powerful man on earth. See how the devil works. He just got Americans to give away democracy to a man who's been playing them for a fool. God help us, and please God, have mercy on us.